Hey, Perry, I thought you were going to do an intro. What the hey? Good Lord. I mean, are you just here or what?
I tell you what, that was the most boring section I think I've heard.
Story of my life. I
I
get that
can
all
tell
the
you where that's
time.
going to end up,
Well,
buddy, right?
safety. Doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah,
That'll be
scratch
all
the
over the
safety off. This
floor.
is crap. This is just crap. Safety.
You're listening to the Foundry Talk podcast with your hosts, Nate McLean and Perry Merritt. Take it away, boys.
Well, welcome back. My name is Perry. Welcome back to the Foundry Talk podcast. This is episode 6. With me, as always, I have my partner, Nate McLean. And today we are privileged to have Tim Carr, the owner of Cutting Edge Abrasives. Tim is an aspiring field engineer, so he's hoping to demote himself from owner to field engineer. We've had a lot of good conversation with Tim today already. And Tim, I just want to ask you, as we get started here, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about the company, and what you guys are all about.
Sure, happy to. Thanks for having me on. And I've looked forward to this all week. I've dreamt about it. I've had nightmares about it. But no, that's a great way to start the.
Understandable.
Yeah.
I would be happy to introduce myself. So I'm from a small little town in Iowa called Lamoni, which is the first exit off of I-35. If you're headed north and you cross over from Missouri into Iowa, the first exit is Lamoni. So that is where I hail from. I live in the Kansas City area, Independence, Missouri, home of Harry S. Truman. And that is company headquarters for Cutting Edge. That is where we warehouse our product and run the operations of the company.
So clearly you are a transplant to Missouri.
Well, yeah.
Not Missouri.
Yeah.
So is it really truly the show me state?
Why I have no idea. I'm not sure what we're showing.
Well, if it was in Louisiana and it was New Orleans, I would understand what the show me state was, especially if anybody's throwing beads at you. But I don't understand.
I'm not sure what
we're Missouri.
No, I don't.
I think you require.
Well, I thought we were getting some
idea is you
clarity
require
during
proof.
the
Okay.
See something.
They're
saying, show me what you got. It's not. It's not.
Is that really what it is?
Yeah, it is. Shut up or shut up.
Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate the clarity for sure.
As far as I'm concerned, it's the abrasive state. So that's
the abrasive.
Abrasive Tim says it's the abrasive state. Cutting Edge Abrasives here to serve you.
But I was near graduation, and I was in a fraternity at the University of South Dakota, and met a guy. Probably might have been my freshman year, for sure by my sophomore year, but I think it was freshman year of college. Met a guy by the name of John Thege. But as I neared graduation, John and his wife Jan approached me and said, "What are your plans?" And they had asked me, "Are you interested in selling? Are you interested? Can we tell you more about our company?" And the answer at the time was, "Well, thank you, but I'm going to law school." That was my plan. I was a political science economics major, and a lot of political science economics majors, just kind of by default, they went to law school. So I don't know that I gave it much thought as to why, or is that what I want to do? It's just, okay, I'm going to go to law school. So at the time, I told them no, I wasn't interested. I already had another career pathway in mind. But as it turns out, I made it through a day and a half of law school orientation. So, needless to say, Cutting Edge is not a great source for legal advice. We're happy to give free, bad legal advice if anybody needs it. But Other than that, we stick to abrasives. Why did I leave? Why did I literally, I left after, I think, lunch on that second day of orientation. Interestingly enough, they brought in the, at the time, Chief Justice of the South Dakota Supreme Court. And I wish I could thank him. I should have written him a letter thanking him. But essentially, I remember him saying something to the effect of, if you are here without really thinking about why you are here, if you are here just because you've heard that attorneys make a nice living, you need to go do something else. And he even said, he said, did anybody know what the average salary for an attorney in the state of South Dakota is? And he gave the statistic. It was not terribly high. You know, for some reason that resonated with me. I said, I'm not really here because this is what I want to do. I don't have any particular great passion to do this. So I left. And it was kind of embarrassing. I mean, it was a little embarrassing. I think, you know, you're worried about what people think, or
Well, he can't
right,
hack
he
it. He
can't
dropped
hack it.
out.
Well, that wasn't it. I mean, I was capable. I did very well in school. That wasn't the issue. It was just that wasn't my passion. So that restarted eventually the conversation with John and Jan Thiegy, owners of Diamond Tool and Abrasives, about coming to work for them. And in the probably, I think it was summer of 2012, John Thiegy convinced me to go travel with him and to just see if maybe this abrasives thing would be something that I would enjoy. So I did. He, at the end of that couple days of traveling, said, you know, think it over, get back to me. Initially, I then said no again, and I worked a couple of different jobs. I was still up in South Dakota. And at some point in, it's probably the late summer, early fall of 2012, I called him back and said, John, is there still an opportunity? I want to give this a shot. Let's see if this could work. He said, absolutely. God moves in mysterious ways, and that chain of events
Amen.
turned out to be exactly what needed to happen in my life, and I guess ultimately led to starting Cutting Edge Abrasives. Started Cutting Edge Abrasives at the beginning of 2024, and we're rocking and rolling. There's a lot more growth to be had, but so far so good. I'm having fun. We're growing. I think we're doing a nice job for our customers. We have a great team. Could not have done this without a great team behind me.
Cutting Edge Abrasives is a new startup for the most part, right? Even though it's kind of like can manufacturing, we're classified as a startup. Even though I've got 30 years of experience in the foundry business, I've ran successfully over the last 12 years. D Foundries in Houston, Texas, very profitable small business running aluminum and copper based alloys. Cutting Edge Abrasives is no different in that regard for a startup. So when you think about startup, Tim, there's so much stuff that goes into all of that, whether it be the back end with the computer system and the ERP and the how do you manage all your inventory and things of that nature. Does it have anything to do with actually putting a stone to a piece of metal and grinding? No, not necessarily, but it's super important when it comes to Foundry. This is the Foundry and I'm knocking stuff off my desk and business talk podcast for the most part, because without the business side of things, the foundry side is such a niche community, and the business side, the back ends type of stuff that I struggle with because I'm a foundry guy, right? I like to put my hands into the sand. I like to make cores. I like to make molds. I like to do the engineering and the designing of the gating systems and the solidification and flow analysis and all the stuff that goes along with that you learn over time by gaining experience of being out in the Gemba on the floor doing the work where the work is being done. I would think that the stuff that Tim does at Cutting Edge Abrasives and everything that goes along with that, with the warehousing and all that sort of stuff, the business type stuff that most people take for granted that it doesn't have anything to do with putting a wheel to a rock, or a rock to a stone, or and a stone to a piece of metal, or whatever that might be, whether it's Cinderless grinding or it's foundry grinding, and we're using type 1 and type 27 wheels and things of that nature. Some of those things I think are super important for us to talk about, because those are the type of things that we need young entrepreneurs to know, that hey, there are viable businesses out there. Tim's a small company. How many employees do you have, Tim?
Well, we have, including me, we'll throw my wife in there, although she's really the boss.
Absolutely.
2, 3. There's 5 of us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean,
5.
that it doesn't get much more entrepreneurial than that, in my opinion. It's a startup, right? You just started what, a year ago? You're a little over a year ago. Cutting Edge Abrasives was born.
We did, yeah, beginning of 2024.
So we're kind of in the same category, right? We started January 1st of 2025, even though I got 30 years of experience in this business as far as the world goes and the banking world goes and everything else that goes along with that to try to run a business. They look at you like, when did you start up? We'd like to loan you $250,000 for your line of credit and things of that nature. Well, guess what happens? You tell them, well, we started on January 1 of 2025. They're like, okay, we'll talk to you in a couple of years. It's nice meeting you. It's
Yeah,
all those challenges you run into when it comes from cash flow and how do you run the business, because you've got to pay your bills, right? If I don't pay my bill to Cutting Edge Abrasives can't pay their bill to whoever the people are that are manufacturing the rocks for us, that sort of thing. It's just a big it's a challenge for a startup company. And I'll be the first to admit there have been challenges that I didn't 100% see. Most of them were all because of I never really had the opportunity the last 12 years at D Foundries to actually be involved with the back office type stuff, dealing with the P&L, dealing with the balance sheet, dealing with the billing, all that stuff. Even though you would get asked questions about that stuff, and I would get numbers, so I could keep an eye on it. But whenever you're reading a P&L and you're looking at the balance sheet and accounting, all this other stuff, you got debits and credits and all the stuff that goes along with it. And there's a lot of stuff to juggle, right? Because you got a cash flow. You know as well as I do, if you don't pay your bills, somebody's gonna be calling you, dunning you. The last thing I want to do is Tim's staff to be calling me and saying, "Hey, this invoice is it's at 33 days. You promised me that you pay us a net 30." But if you don't do that, well, guess what happens? A lot of times, some of our customers, they are such large companies that they might pay net 45, they might pay net 60. They've said that they're going to pay you net 30, and it's such a challenge to be able to use that money as a small business, right? You got 5 employees, we got about 10 to 15 of us total here. And to do that, payroll's coming. It doesn't matter. Healthcare's coming. We provide Blue Cross Blue Shield healthcare and dental and life insurance and vision and all that sort of stuff for our employees. You're dealing with all that stuff. You're burning through money like crazy. You got a cash flow, and so you have to cash flow as well. That all ties into one another. How do
yeah.
you how do you deal with that with cash flow?
Well, you gotta get both sides of the business right. I mean, the technical, the product application side, if that's not strong, if you can't walk into a foundry and create value for them, either through lower price or improving the efficiency in the cleaning room or the finishing room, if you don't know the technical side, what's the best way to cut this 3-inch aluminum bronze riser?
Hmm.
You're not going to be successful. There has to be product knowledge. There has to be application knowledge. And so, if I hadn't have, without the 10 years of experience prior to starting Cutting Edge, I wouldn't have done it. I probably wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have started my own company. The other side, the business side, you got to get that right too. I mean, we've seen lots of businesses come and go. Man, their people know they're product experts. They've got good products, they know what they're doing, they've got expertise,
Right.
but they can't run a business. They just can't run a business. My approach is if I don't, yes, is there some learn as you go in this? Absolutely. I mean, is there some trial and error? Yeah, absolutely. But if I don't know something, I go find somebody that's really good at it.
Sure.
And I have, And so that's, I think, one of the reasons we've been successful so far is that's what we've done. We have gone to our mentors in the business. I've gone to couples that have run a successful abrasives distributorship for 40 plus years and asked for their help. That's made all the difference in the world. That's my approach. I don't try to be an expert at everything because you can't be. Nobody is. Find somebody that's an expert. If you don't understand payroll, if you don't understand insurance, if you don't understand cash flow, if you don't understand what you're looking at on a P&L, well, find somebody that does. I do, my background, my college background is economics, and I got an MBA. That helps. I mean, that's helped some. I can at least look at a balance sheet or a P&L and L and know what I'm looking at. But honestly, learning through experience is probably more valuable than that. And leaning on people that have done it is what has helped the most.
I think that's valid. I mean, coaches and mentors. The one thing that I really love about coaches and mentors, people that really want to mentor you, fortunately, they are operating a lot of times from a 50,000 foot view, and kind of like the coaches for college football. They're up above. They're watching from the outside, looking in, and they can see what the play is going on. They can see, oh well, hey, there's an exposure over here. We've got a problem over here, and they can help you in that regard. It doesn't get much better than that. As long as we check our ego, we don't get upset when people tell us something that might be constructive criticism, and we actually run with the information and go with it rather than them being defensive about it. One thing I've noticed is the coaches and mentors that I've had in my life over the last, especially the last 20 years, and really the last 5 to 8 years. Man, it's been invaluable for those people to actually have conversations. And
How do you market this stuff, and or how are you selling it? Are you doing it like you going out direct to the customer, or are you doing it all online, or how are you guys getting your name and your product out there so people want to buy it?
Sure. Yeah, no, the old-fashioned way for sure. We're going into accounts. Um, we're with the mission of proving that we can create value. And value can come in different ways. Value can come in increased productivity or efficiency. Value can come in through excellent customer service. Value can come through making sure product is always available. Value can come through, wait a minute, what are you using to cut those gates? I got a better option. Trust me on this, I've seen it before. I think we can reduce your cut times or your grinding time by 20 or 30%. We just saved you a lot of money there. So that's our approach. You're not, if you look at our website, it's still a work in progress. It's not bad, but we don't take online orders. It's really, this is, especially for engineered applications, you need to go in and look at the application. There are a lot of variables. And if you try to engineer from the parking lot, so to speak, as my former boss used to say, you're not going to be very successful. You need to go in and see the machine. You need to go in and see the castings. You need to go in and talk to the operator. You need to go in and ask what is and isn't currently working. So that's one thing I do. If I'm walking into a cleaning room, I don't just try to match what they're currently using. I like to ask, are there problems? Would you like to see an improvement in a certain area? Do you have is there a certain casting or certain application that's creating a bottleneck? Well, let's look at that. Let's try to fix. Yeah, it's very rare that I'm making a sale over the phone.
You've got a fairly sizable investment in a customer before you actually sell anything to them, it sounds like.
Yes. Yes. I mean, in a perfect world, we'd, show up and 30 minutes later we'd have, wonderful orders coming our way. But more likely than not, yes, this is going to, it's a long-term process. You're building a relationship. I mean, there has to
Sure.
be a trust, like any relationship. They have
Exactly.
to know,
And for the most part, you are. I mean, because you're flying to different towns. I mean, you've got airfare, you've got motels, you've got rental cars, all those type of investments that you've got. So hopefully, most of that. I mean, you're let's say like when you fly into Houston for the most part, you've got a sizable investment in that regard. Hopefully, you can distribute that amongst 6 or 8 different companies that you can kind of split that up. But I mean, when it comes to, I mean, even when people listen to or watch shows like Shark Tank and things of that nature, they're always talking about what it costs to acquire a customer and retain a customer and that sort of thing. So I mean, do you get that granular whenever you're looking at that sort of thing, or you just kind of lump it all into it's part of travel, it's cost of doing business. You don't necessarily worry about what kind of return you get in a geographic location that you might get in the Gulf Coast of Houston versus when you fly into Dallas, or if you fly into Birmingham, Alabama, or wherever, California for that matter.
yeah. Well, I live in Kansas City, and I love Kansas City. My family's here, my home's here. But if I had to, list one criticism of Kansas City, it would be that it would be nearly impossible to make a nice living selling abrasives in Kansas City. So now that may not have been true 30 or 40 years ago. As you both probably may or may not know, uh, at one time there were a pretty sizable foundry population in Kansas City. That has declined dramatically over the last 40 years. But the reality of it is, I have to travel and I have to sink the investment into motels and, you know, rental cars and flights and all that. Do I get down into the weeds of saying, okay, I spent $2,000 on that trip, I need to get at least X return? No. Do I know what I spend on an annual basis in terms of travel? Sure, absolutely. But it's money well spent. It's money well spent. There's no substitute for face to face interaction. Yes, we live in a digital, evolving, technological AI world, but certainly in the foundry industry, one thing that I think is true today, I think it'll be true 20 years from now. If you want to sell abrasives, you have to show up. And so that's what I do. Yeah, I go from, I have some accounts out in the middle of nowhere, that you would never think. Some very nice accounts, in the middle of Kansas or Arkansas that you wouldn't even necessarily know about. But yeah, primarily I'm going to the major population centers within the greater Midwest and looking for opportunities. And whatever I spend on an annual basis in terms of travel, there's a return on that. If I'm doing my job, if I'm going to the right places that have a good fit for our company, and if I'm getting my hands dirty, yeah, that time and that money will pay off.
Okay. So what would you consider is your biggest seller? I mean, do you have a certain um, product that is like, hey, this is our number one thing. We're going to target this in this area, or is it just the gamut is so wide and vast of all of the different rocks and stones and belts and mounted points and burrs and all this sort of stuff that goes along with it? Because the foundry in general, whether it's centrifugal or investment cast or sand cast or whatever the case might be, die casters, um, we all use different rocks. We all use different abrasives because we have to remove metal some way, somehow, and doing it in the most efficient manner. A lot of us foundry guys, we've learned over time, but I depend on a Tim Carr. I depend on a Norton guy. I depend on the Wheeler guys, all the different abrasive guys, whether not necessarily just only Tim, because Tim can't have 100% of everything, and to build those relationships
Well,
so that we can.
not necessarily.
Tim has everything you need, buddy.
I'd learn to live with it if you gave me 100%.
Okay, well, you don't charge extra if we buy 100% of the stuff we get. Hey, maybe you and I need to talk about a rebate program then. How about that? There's all kinds of stuff we can talk about then. We can do some negotiation right here on the
There we
pod. How about that?
That'd be interesting, like a Shark Tank.
The FTB, FTP. It's not file transfer protocol either, Perry.
That's
In,
right,
Talk
FTP,
podcast.
buddy.
in answer to your question, I'll give you some general products that probably are most popular. We sell a lot of cutoff wheels. There's
I
an
got 5 of your good ones yet last week. 24-inch.
You're gonna like those. Yeah,
Beasts.
that's a good product. That's a big area for us. Absolutely. We sell a lot of snagging wheels, 30-inch, 20-inch, 12-inch, either for a floor stand grinder or swing frame grinders. So that's on we'll call that the rough grinding side. On the precision grinding side, we sell a lot of centerless grinding wheels. We sell a lot of surface grinding wheels, OD grinding, ID grinding wheels. So, and then also another market that we focus on is that metallurgical consumables market. And we sell, and that can involve, there's cutoff wheels involved there. There's 8 to 12-inch silicon carbide paper, ranging from 60
For
grit,
like the polishing stations and things of that nature.
1200 grit, yes, polishing
Yeah.
pads, polishing suspension, mounting powder if you have to mount the sample.
So I'm ignorant, and in all the years that I have known you, I didn't realize you targeted any of that. And the last 2 times you were here, I don't think I took you out in the shop, did I?
Yeah, we went.
Did I? Did
Yeah.
I didn't show you our metallurgy, our lab where our spectrometer stuff is at, because we use all those products, and I don't think I had you quote any of those.
Well, you can see how great of a job I did.
You're an aggressive sales
what
guy.
a
I'll tell you
sales
that.
guy! I tell you, man, he just digs his nose into everything.
It was
Opens
late
every
in the
door, see if there's any abrasives back here.
day. It was late in the day.
It was.
But yeah, no,
I stayed late for you too, by the way.
well,
Everybody leaves here at 5 o'clock, and what did Nate do? I stayed till like 6:30, 7 o'clock, waiting on your butt to get
I
here.
appreciate that because you
You
normally
know why? Because I like Tim
Yeah.
Carr.
you normally leave at what, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's the end of your day, right?
You're lucky if I show up. If I don't leave it, I mean it's noon, so might as well go get a cold beer and then go play golf the rest of the afternoon. That's what owners of foundries do, right? Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I get asked.
Says the guy that slept in his office for 3 months because I didn't have a house. I was homeless.
I get asked that. I said, "Oh, you're in sales. You travel around. You play a lot of golf." I said, "Man, I can count on one hand the number of rounds of golf I've played in the last 13 years on the road. And those I did play were probably, 9 holes at 5 o'clock in the evening. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
but you are going to the Plain States golf outing on the first weekend in June, aren't you?
I'm planning to. Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's not the answer you want. You're just like an exuberant. Yes, I will be there with bells on.
I have was I long drive last year? I've got a
Oh
title.
yeah. Oh, he's still bragging about that, Perry. You hear that? He's coming back for more.
Yeah,
All you can eat, baby.
that baby is bolted on my mantle.
He shows that to everybody that comes out. Have you seen this? Have
And
you seen this? I've got the
I'm
longest
surprised it hasn't
drive.
shown
That's
up on
all
those
you can
cards.
eat.
and the third place overall, I think 2 years ago.
You know what? You know what place we got last year?
Were you last? Were you last?
I tried.
You try.
We got the Duffer Award. I gave it to my mom. She was so happy to get a little trophy from me. I gave it to her the next day. She still has it. And when I saw her this last trip, she was like, "Hey, do you want to take your trophy back with you?" I was like, "No, I don't want the last place trophy, Mom. That's terrible."
When
Good
is that,
Lord.
by the way? Is that the last Saturday in May, or is it the?
No, first. So the practice round is on June 6th, which you should bring your wife to that. And my wife and Scott's wife and everybody will be there. So bring your wife. Practice round is on Friday. We all get together for dinner on Friday evening, and then Saturday is shotgun start there at Wentz Golf Course in Ponca City, Oklahoma.
No, that's become a tradition. I've played the last few years, and
It's a great group of guys,
yeah,
well, and gals.
yeah, yeah. So
I digress. I completely took us right off the rails, Perry. I apologize. I just totally jacked us up.
That's all right. That's all right. Did you get that trophy to show us or that plaque?
oh man, hold on.
Yeah, yeah. Get that. So he's got to unbolt it. He really has it bolted to the wall. Come on, bring it in, Brecker.
There it is.
Oh yeah, baby.
Here's longest putt. I sleep with it every night. Ooh, longest drive. There we go from last year.
Oh, it's more than one.
It's proof.
Lord.
at
Oh, he's
that.
bringing it in
Longest
tight,
drive.
folks. Look at this guy.
And 2023 third place.
Wow.
Man, you just
Wow.
loaded up with stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's one thing to talk about it. It's entirely different thing when you actually bring the trophies to the podcast as proof. And when you throw down the gauntlet and you're coming for the 2025 Plain States golf outing on June 6th and 7th, that is just epic.
It's like wearing your letter jacket. Clang.
Yeah, and your class ring at the same time.
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you've been out of high school for years.
Do they do letter jackets anymore? Are those?
Yeah, absolutely they do. Yeah, I tried to get a letter jacket when I was in high school, but I didn't play any sports, not any sports.
Yeah.
My parents never would let me play.
And they didn't have one for the
killer and all of those things. I would have loved to wrestle. Man, all those
Oh, you'd be great.
Their little head.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I never got to do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I tried to get a letter jacket in welding and wood shop, but guess what? You can't letter in those things. So I was screwed. No letter jacket for me. I have to wear my wife's letter jacket if I want to wear a letter jacket. It says Kelly Beard on it. Now, how cool is that? Man, I'm like the Fonz. Woohoo!
With your wife's letter.
Wearing your wife's jacket.
Hey, Perry, don't make fun of me. I identify as a
what?
Kelly Beard, I guess. I don't know.
I'd never seen that tried in high school. Wear your girlfriend's letter jacket around.
Yeah, they like to wear their boyfriends. Why not?
That's true.
Hey, property of Kelly Beard.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, she's lucky that she could run fast and she could catch me because she got a good one. I mean, it doesn't happen every day that a gal can chase you down, but here I am. I'm living proof.
We'll have to bring her on to verify that, but
she'll tell
Tim,
you. This is the best dude I've ever met in my life. I'm so lucky to be married to him for 30 years. I'm here to tell you, man. I keep it lively. There's not a dull moment. I mean, where else would you marry a guy and become a serial entrepreneur and own 3 businesses all at once? We own part of Kansas Cassie's with my great buddy Matt Lyons up there in Belle Plaine. We own KN Manufacturing. The K in KN happens to be Kelly. Her name's first, by the way, Tim. Take that as a lesson. My wife's name is first on our company, Kelly and Nate Manufacturing. knmanufacturing.com, and then she also makes rubber stamps. She runs that business on her own. It's stampsonsale.com, and 90% of all of her business comes from Amazon. 10% comes from her website, stampsonsale.com. And having 3 businesses, we need to offload one of these. The stamp business is going to go. We got to find somebody to bless that with, sell it, or gift it, or something. But she doesn't need to be doing that anymore.
Too much.
Yeah.
So I guess that
means so many hours in a day. So
Tim's wife's name must be Cutting. Is that how it works?
Cutting.
Yeah. His nickname is Edge. That's why he went with that.
Cutting Edge. But deservedly so.
So So Tim,
So
as I
Tim,
do the introduction, you're owner?
I am. Yes, my
but
wife.
you refer to yourself as a field engineer, right?
Yeah, if you, and that's by design. I mean,
Design.
I really want to be known as a field engineer, an applications engineer. Um, at my old job, my prior job, I think the first batch of business cards I got said abrasive specialist. I thought, that can be taken the wrong way, although
Yeah.
perhaps very fitting. In fact, I don't know if I can get it. My
Is it
my
another trophy?
my no, this is not a trophy.
Not a trophy.
This is my brothers had a T-shirt made for me. It's a so here's the Cutting Edge logo,
Oh
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
and it's a spin off of the Cutting Edge logo.
Abrasive Tim Carr.
Abrasive Tim Carr. So there we go.
Yeah, he does rub you a little bit the wrong way
Yeah,
sometimes.
the abrasive specialist.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is so cool that somebody would actually want to give you a little bit of rhetoric and a little needling, and do it in the form of a shirt that will put a smile on your face. And matter of fact, everybody else that's going to see this on the podcast is going to get a chuckle out of that. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
That's love right there.
I always say my job is to balance taking care of you without driving you crazy.
Yeah,
And that is an important skill for somebody in sales to have. To service an account effectively, to communicate as much as is needed and required, but not to become annoying.
sure.
You
Yeah,
know,
I think that's wise.
deciding, balancing that, deciding, where the fine line is can be tough, but I do my best.
Well, and I can testify that you are one of the better salespeople out there that has ever called on me, because in the foundry industry, and not to sound silly, but I don't really talk to very many salespeople, to be quite frank. I don't really need their help. After 30 years, you pretty much asked a gazillion questions. You kind of know what's going on. When I do call and ask a question, it's because I really don't know,
Yeah.
or I can't find the answer myself. It's not because I'm lazy and I need to call. I can call Tim. I don't have to even look anything up, that sort of thing. Because as being a lifelong learner, I really don't like not knowing things. It drives me crazy. Maybe it's a character flaw of mine. I don't know. I consider it a good character trait, but um, you can kind of get into weeds in that regard as well too. But um, when it comes to your business
You
and your
always want
team,
to learn. I mean, if there's one thing that's fun and cool and exciting and energizing about what I do, it's that there's an opportunity to learn each and every day. And if you don't learn something every day, something has gone wrong in your day. I mean, you've sat in the car all day, or you haven't really done your job. But I can truthfully say I learn something new each and every day. And I've heard guys that have been in the field 50, 60 years that have said that, man, I learned something today. So it's a lifelong pursuit. We'll
yeah,
never arrive at a perfect knowledge on abrasives, but I'll spend 50 years trying.
yeah, for sure.
I have one question that's probably not fitting for the thing.
The podcast, just you want to know, go
Yeah,
for it.
yeah, but maybe it is. I don't know. So, as a guy that uses abrasives to fix a lot of my work, yeah, I'm one of those welders that I can weld, but then I spend 90% of my time grinding, kind of a guy. You know, I put bubble gum on a piece of metal and then try to grind it down to look good. And I go to the local Chinese distributor, Harbor Freight, to buy my abrasives and things. Um, I assume that there are abrasives out there that are far better than what I buy at that local outlet. Is that true? I mean, is there stuff that I should be getting? And is it one of those deals where, like, I can buy 10 discs for for $10, or I could buy, you know, at $1 a piece, or I could buy one disc for $10 and it's going to last me twice as long as those 10. Is it, I mean, is there some truth to that, that if I buy quality, I'm just going to be better off with it? But I mean, they're
Yes.
disposable, right?
Yes. I mean, the short answer is yes. If you're going to Harbor Freight to buy, 4.5 inch, 7 inch, 9 inch grinding wheels, whatever it might be,
Mhm.
yes, there are much better quality options. Uh, Everything you're buying from Harbor Freight is likely standard cheap aluminum oxide Chinese manufactured abrasives. Uh, there are better options. There are certainly higher life options. There's zirconia abrasives. There's ceramic. There's silicon carbide, which can be helpful, effective, depending on the application, especially for non-ferrous foundries. You'll see a lot of silicon carbide abrasive used. But yeah, that's where I get in, and the best time for me, the best time spent is in a controlled test at a customer where we are running one wheel against the other. We're grinding the same metal for, like on a cutoff wheel test, for example, at a foundry. If we've got 10 identical castings with sizable gates, we'll cut 5 castings with our wheel, 5 castings with the competitor's wheel. We'll measure the wheel wear, we'll measure the cut times, and same principles apply somewhat on grinding wheel tests as well. That's the best time spent for me because, one, I learn in terms of an application perspective, but I can then go back to the customer and say, here's some data, not a feeling, not I feel like this was a better product, or not the operator said, oh, yeah, I like that one, or oh, that one wasn't any good. Here's some actual data on performance that you can use to make a buying decision.
Yeah.
And that's
So,
that's that's the best
I,
time spent for any abrasives engineer, period.
so when you go out to these places to sell, I mean, are you like the old Fuller brush salesman? You come in with a suitcase full of abrasive wheels and say, let's go out to your shop and do a comparison, or?
I mean, the first visit, my goal is I want to see what they're using. I want to see what they're doing. I'd love, like if I'm going into a foundry, I'd love to watch some cuts being made, watch some
Mhm.
castings being ground. And that's really the first visit. No, I'm probably not gonna bring in uh, a bunch of samples to try on that first visit. But if I can see what they're using, how they're using them, what they're trying to achieve, maybe some problems that they're currently facing, the next time I come back, yeah, I'm either going to bring some samples with me or have them shipped in. With hopefully, if I can get the blessing of the cleaning room manager or the plant manager, I want to run a test. And
Mhm.
so,
So I guess that, I mean, it gives you some information about what your competition is up to as well, right? How you stack up against them.
yeah, you want
It's
to see,
always good knowledge to have.
yeah, you want to know what you're competing against. Absolutely. I mean, the
Yeah.
more information you have, the more likely that you're going to be successful. And I tell people that, look, I'm going to ask questions. My intention in asking you questions is not to drive you nuts. My intention in asking you a bunch of questions is to do a good job for you, to come up with a product that is the best suited for your application, with the goal of saving you time or money, which is redundant. If you are saving time, you are saving money. So that's my approach.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. I I'm just flashing back to my old careers, and some of the best guys, the best sales guys that I knew did exactly that, right? They'd walk into a site and they just, "What are you doing? Let's see what you're doing," and just walk away with learning, and then come back later with, "If you look at this or look at that." That we might have, but yeah, just this idea of figuring it out. The worst guys that I would do is like the guys that Nate won't talk to, right? Come in and just try to sell me something right out of the
Yeah.
off the street, you know?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm never going to walk in ever and lay down a line card and say, why don't you send me an email of some stuff you're using and I'd love to quote you. That's just
Yeah.
not going to happen. Um, uh, I hope none of my competitors are watching this, but
Yeah. Well, well, since we only have about 4 people that watch the podcast, you're probably
we're
safe.
okay. But no, that's just not the way. And why do I have that approach? When I first started, for the first few months and even after that, my training was following around a guy who's now, he'll be 86 this year. At the time, he was in his early 70s. And we just go from account to account, learning about different applications. And he started in the abrasives industry in the early 60s. His name is John Thiegy, the best I've ever seen, best abrasives application engineer I've ever seen, probably ever will see. He started with Allison, manufacturer of abrasive cutoff wheels. Worked there for, I think, roughly 14 years before buying a small distributorship out of the Chicago area that he grew into a very successful company. So that was my training, was getting our hands dirty, throwing a hard hat on, and going and looking at applications. And as much as possible, we'd run tests. Learned a lot about the rail industry through tests. I love rail cutoff tests because it's easy to conduct a controlled test. You've got the same saw, you've got the same operator, you've got the same piece of rail, and we can make 4 or 5 cuts with our wheel, 4 or 5 cuts with a competitor's wheel, measure the cut times, measure the wear, and we can get about as scientific a data as you can. There's science in the abrasives world, absolutely. Is there a scientific aspect to engineering abrasives? Absolutely. Selecting the right grit size, the right bond type, the right density or structure, reinforcing a wheel correctly. Yes, but because there are so many variables involved, and probably the number one variable in every application that's hard to control is the operator. Because there are so many variables, it's definitely also an art. I mean, there are for sure times that the product that probably shouldn't win or shouldn't be the preferred wheel ends up being the preferred wheel of that particular operator. And so you just have to know that going in, and that's part of the frustration and maybe part of the fun as well.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if an operator sees a brand X name on a wheel and that's what they've been using for a long time, and then they see your no name wheel, let's say brand Y, come in, even though that your wheel might be a superior product, and they don't see the nice shiny Cadillac or whatever brand that's on the wheel itself, they might perceive that as, I don't want to be driving a Ford F-150, which may be what your product is, because it's cost effective, it does the job, and it doesn't break the bank. Whereas the other wheels, brand X, might be higher, not do as well, and they're just buying it because of the name, and it's popular. They do a lot of good marketing and things of that nature. Not to say that brand X might not be a good wheel, but yours might be a better wheel because you might be giving them more value based off of the cost of the wheel might be under. Let's say it's 10% cheaper, but it produces more cuts before it wears out. Because as we know, and my limited knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the time you can't have a wheel that lasts a long time, but it has a high removal rate because those things don't go together. You either get a wheel that lasts a long time, but it doesn't remove the material as quickly, so therefore you've got more labor in the cost of cleaning or cutting off.
Well,
But if you have a very aggressive wheel that removes a lot of material, your labor cost is going to be less, but the wheel is going to be consumed up. It's going to wear out faster. Is that correct or
yes.
wrong?
I mean, yes, there's typically an inverse relationship between wheel life and rate of material removal. Absolutely. I mean, you can.
Why is that? I'm lost on that one. Like the longest lasting wheels are the bound together the best, or they're the
They
least
don't remove
abrasive,
much
or
material.
Well,
Yeah, they don't remove much material at all.
now in the old days, now we're going back a ways. All abrasive products were aluminum oxide. You know, ceramics and zirconia. Uh, I don't. I'll be honest. I don't know what year those grains became more popularized, but there was a time in the abrasives industry where it was aluminum oxide. Now,
Mhm.
with zirconia and ceramic being introduced, it is possible to develop a product that more closely would give you the best of both worlds. In other words, it's lasting, it's showing good wheel life, but it's also removing material quickly. So that has been a game changer with advances in technology in bond systems and with advances in terms of what grains are used. It has become possible to develop a wheel that lasts a long time, but also removes metal. But regardless, yes, in general grinding wheel theory, that principle does hold true. I mean, you can make a wheel really, really hard. I mean, you can typically on abrasive wheels, there's a letter hardness. Each manufacturer has a little different grading system. In other words, if Norton sells a product that says 57A 24R, the R being the hardness, their R might not be the same as another manufacturer's R. You know, another manufacturer's R may act a little softer or harder than Norton's R. But I hopefully that,
So
yeah.
when you talk about hardness, you're talking about the hardness of the abrasive or the hardness of the material that's binding the abrasive.
All right, so there's two different things. One, when I speak of hardness, I'm talking about, in technical terms, the percentage of bond in relation to the percentage of abrasive. So,
Okay.
like on a cutoff wheel, an R hardness may have 9.5% bond. Uh, an S hardness might have 10% bond, greater percentage of bond in relation to the entire makeup of the product. So the more bond, the higher the percentage of bond, the harder the wheel. You also have a density variable. You know how closely packed the material is, the abrasive and the filler, the bond. That also impacts hardness. I mean, it also impacts how hard the wheel acts. A more open structure or less dense wheel is going to tend to act more aggressive freer cutting, if you will, than a really tight structure or very dense wheel. So it's lots of different variables, and the reality is, yeah, you could design a really hard, really dense wheel that you would have a really hard time wearing out. But if in the process it's taking you, you know,
Twice as long to cut.
yeah,
Yeah.
3 hours to grind a, 3-inch area of contact, well, then you haven't accomplished anything. You've maybe reduced your spend on abrasives, but you've dramatically increased your spend on labor, which I guarantee you, you walk into any cleaning room in the United States or the world, there's a lot more money being spent on labor than there is on abrasives.
100%.
So
Mm.
you don't want to, what's the saying, cut off your foot to spite your what?
Yeah, your nose to spite your face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't want to say, man, we saved 30% on abrasives this year, and we have half as many castings out the door. At
Right.
that point, you have
Yeah.
not saved money.
Yeah. Unless think you're an idiot. The thing about that is, and we could buy a wheel that we would only have to buy one time throughout the year, right? But the problem is the amount of castings that we would get out the door, our consumable costs would go way down, right? But our
Right.
labor and our revenue would go way down as well.
Yeah.
So there's a happy medium there, and that's the whole point in having somebody like a Tim Carr that shows up and wants you to be able to remove a lot of material and wants to spend time with you in your facility so that you can understand what the time study is, how you go about that, because um, and I'll just comment on it. And Tim, you correct me if I'm wrong about typically the way that we would do that, because a lot of times, how do you actually know what you need to know when it comes to, is this wheel the right wheel for me? Well, how does it compare with brand X and with Tim's wheel? So typically, what we would do is, if we want to know the removal rate, what we will do is we'll take the casting after it's been cut off. This isn't in a cutoff scenario. I'm talking about grinding, putting a rock to a casting to grind off a riser connection or a feeder pad. Okay. And when we do that, we would take the casting, we would get a gross weight of it. Let's say it weighs 100 pounds, just for simple math, right? And then we would weigh and measure the stone. Let's say we're going to use a 16-inch, 2-inch wide rock, a stone, a grinding wheel, and we're going to put it on a swing frame grinder. We're going to grind it. So we're going to weigh that wheel, get a weight of it, and let's say that the wheel weighs 10 pounds. And then we measure the diameter. We're starting out with 16 inches on the OD of that wheel, right? So 100-pound casting, a 10-pound grinding stone, a rock that's at 16 inches in diameter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even remember what the ones we traditionally buy, but this is a scenario we're going to paint. And then we'll have the operator. He's gonna take that stone. He's gonna put it on the swing frame grinder, and he's gonna begin to grind the casting. And at that point, we got a stopwatch running, and we want to know how much time, because we're utilizing removal rate based off of the pounds that we're going to remove, based off the diameter of the wheel and the weight of the wheel, because we're going to get a ratio of how much metal we removed in a certain amount of minutes, and then also how much wheel we lost in a certain amount of pounds that we removed. Is that a correct assumption, Tim?
Yes, yeah. So it's essentially you're calculating a G ratio. That's the scientific term, which is defined.
That could be construed as a lot of different things, depending on if you're talking to college kids in a frat house or whatever. The G ratio can be completely construed as many different things, Tim. So we're really going to have to dial this in for the foundry industry, if you don't mind. Keep it PG.
For me,
Please keep it PG.
there's really,
I was afraid you were going to go to spots there for a second, buddy.
for me, there can only be one meaning.
Okay. He's straight up all business, folks.
So here's what a G ratio is, and this is exactly what you just described. A measure of a grinding wheel's efficiency and durability. It's calculated as the ratio of the volume of material removed from the workpiece to the volume of the wheel that is worn away during grinding. or cutting. Yes. So you're coming up with a ratio or a fraction to say we removed this amount of metal, and in the process of removing that amount of metal, this is how much grinding wheel or cutting wheel we lost in terms of
Right. And the good thing about the G ratio is the fact that you actually have math and science to go along with it. It's not just the operator's opinion that I like the one that has the blue lettering on it rather than the one that has the white stencil lettering on it.
yeah,
Take that all aside, take all of that off, paint both wheels, completely black so that it's an unbiased G rating study, time study, and removal rate, and whichever wheel wins is the wheel that we were going to purchase at least for the next quarter until um, Tim can come up with a better type of a wheel that we can experiment with. Obviously, we don't want to be doing this every bloody month because it does take time and that sort of thing. But one thing that's great about and it's not just Tim. There are other vendors that will do the same thing, not necessarily to the degree that Tim will do it. And when Tim shows up at your shop, he's an extension of my cleaning department, right? He's got some expertise that our guys don't do because they're what are they doing? They're putting abrasives to castings so we can get them cleaned up as quick as we can
yeah.
because we've got to get them out the door. Until we ship something out the dock, we don't get to invoice it, and payroll's still coming, property taxes are still happening, GL insurance and property insurance and health insurance has to be paid, and all those things that go along with that. So if we don't have somebody on our team like a Tim or somebody from brand X or whatever the case might be, you're working at a little bit of a disadvantage. And if you're not working, if you're out there and you're running a foundry, I'm thinking about Clark at this rate because we just interviewed Clark. He was a guest on Thursday's podcast, and he's a one-man band. I don't know if you get out to Mississippi, but you need to go call on Clark Easterling at Windy Hill Foundry. He needs all the help. Give him some samples and that sort of thing. This guy, he's got the DNA and the strand to make a foundry work. If anybody that can do it, as long as he's been doing it by himself, doing it solo, he's got some grit, determination, and he's not going to fail. I'm guaranteeing you. I wish I had 10 Clark Easterlings because those are anybody that shows up and he's working for himself and he's out there digging in at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning and going to bed and getting up and getting after it and doing it again. That's not a normal dude, man. He's a foundry guy, and those are hard to find. So, but again, it's not even Clark. It's the other guys. It's um, the guys that are out in the trenches doing it. I mean, we use your products a lot of times at Kansas Castings for our big 30-inch snag grinders. We buy them, I think, 10 at a time. There's lots of abrasives that we purchase from you. Why? Because you have excellent customer service. We can always get a hold of you. We can get consignment material if we need to. You'll put stuff in the warehouse on the shelf for us so we don't have to inventory it ourselves. We're going to buy a product from you. If we order it, we can get it relatively quickly. All those type of things make Cutting Edge Abrasives a valued vendor for us, for Kansas Castings, and for K&N Manufacturing. We did business with you at D Foundries in Houston as well. I mean, so anybody that needs some help when it comes to clean or advice on what abrasives can we get, can we reduce our consumables in the cleaning department? I would encourage them to reach out to you for sure,
Well,
because you will be an extension of their business. And like I said, I don't talk to very many sales guys because I don't really need that much help. But Tim is one that I will take the time. I'll even stay late and meet with him when he's running behind, because he offers value to our business, and it's a partnership, almost like a handshake agreement amongst friends to be able to do business with him. And I couldn't I can't say enough good things about Tim Carr in general. I don't know about the other people that are working with you, but
they're
they got to be halfway decent.
better. They're even better.
And your wife has to be a saint, be married to Tim.
She is.
Well, and I should note, Tim, we'll be invoicing you for that advertisement, that
Yeah.
that endorsement.
And this episode 6 of Foundry Talk Podcast is brought to
Sponsored
you
by-
by Cutting Edge Abrasives. Oh.
No, I thank
No, Tim is not paying us for anything.
thank you for the
There's nothing. He is not giving us any money yet at all.
well, thank you for that.
But we are getting 10% commission on all the sales that come in through the Foundry Talk podcast. So order now, folks.
I
But
am
wait,
looking forward to
there's
the box of
more.
samples.
He can provide you with the whiz bang knife and all the other things, the hearing protection, all this other safety equipment that goes along with it. Sorry,
Does it
guys,
make
I'm
any
highly
stick
caffeinated.
anti-stick
This
pans?
is the caffeinated Nate, fasting Nate right here.
You're good. I like that. No, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And
You can use that on your
I
website
think
if
at
you
least
like.
half of that is true. So thank you. So, no, you make a good point. Data is more helpful than feelings.
Yeah, opinion. Yeah.
Opinion.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, data is much more helpful to a business than opinions. And it takes the bias out of it. I mean, we all have biases. We all, it's
100%.
not, no knock on the operators. If you use a product for 10, 15 years, you're going to develop an attachment to that product. If you drive Nissans for 10 or 15 years and somebody tries to convince you to buy a Honda, it's going to be difficult. It's going to there's a psychological barrier to that, and the same is true in the abrasives industry. But yes, as much as we can, we want to create data, we want to test. Cutoff wheels, I've said it before, that's the easiest test. You don't even have to do a G ratio on that. If you've got, the same casting that you can cut and you can make as near identical cuts, with one wheel and the same number of cuts on identical castings with the other wheel, measure the wear, measure the cut times, you got great data and you got a pretty easy test to conduct. Now, it gets a little harder when you've got a, 1 ton casting and,
The cutoff might take you 30 minutes or something like that to cut. Yeah.
a grinding test is typically more difficult, not impossible, but it's more difficult to conduct a controlled test than a cutoff wheel test. But yes, using G ratios, if you weigh the casting before and after, you weigh the wheel, we can get a pretty good idea of how that wheel is reacting when it's grinding.
Yeah. Do you find very many foundries that actually allow you to do a G ratio when you're trying to compare, or it's just a matter of obviously you can't dictate what they're going to do and what they're going to do within their time. But like for me, example, I want to know what the numbers are because I want to know how it compares apples to apples because honestly, I'm an agnostic when it comes to products. I need to know what the best thing is that's going to be the best removal rate because labor is the most expensive thing that we have. The wheel and abrasives is not, although it sometimes you look at the price on some things and you're like, oh, could it be a 25% cheaper?
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, no, it can't because these are raw materials and all the other crap that goes along with Bidenomics that we've all been fighting and dealing with over these last few years has been insane. But with that being said, the only people that really win are the insurance companies and the lawyers. I hate them all. But that's beside the point.
Well, it's a mixed bag. Some it just varies depending on the how each foundry is run. Some foundries, it's kind of everything is based on the opinion of the operator, and the cleaning room manager, the plant manager, the owner will say, "Look, I understand. Yes, data would be more beneficial than his opinion, but the reality
Sure.
is, I need his buy-in. He's been with us for 25 years. And if he doesn't like it, I'm just not willing to fight that battle of changing if he's not on board. Even if the data shows that we really should make a change to your product." So,
Yeah. So in my opinion, when that happens, it's the responsibility of leadership of the owners, the general managers, the cleaning department superintendent, in my opinion, to be able to. In that case, I'm not a big budget fan. Matter of fact, I hate budgets because I believe it drives overspending. In my opinion, certain clean department, you've got $100,000 budget for the first 2 quarters of the year. Well, guess what they're going to spend? They're going to spend a freaking $100,000. they're never going to spend less than that. So that leadership needs to be being creative and putting some things in place. If you know what your consumables are, month after month after month or quarter after quarter, then set a reasonable budget and then give an incentive to actually reduce that budget. If you've got $100,000 budget for the quarter and you spend $75,000 and you reduce that budget because we know what it is month after month after month, well, the $25,000 that we just saved, as the manager, you get 10% or 5% or whatever that is, and they actually get a tangible check because they're actually doing some benefit for the business and they're actually saving the company money rather than spending the budget and then or exceeding the budget by 10% so we can get a bigger budget. That's why I hate budgets. They're typically used inverse of what my simple mind
Right.
says. If you set a budget for $100,000 and you can save 25%, whoever saved the 25% should actually get a portion of whatever that budget is, so it drives the budget and utilizes the budget in a way that is more profitable for the business and for the employee that's actually doing the stuff that needs to be done.
Well,
Those are the type of creative things that we can do as a small business. Harder to do when corporate America, much easier to do as Nate and Kelly as an entrepreneur, to be able to incentivize those employees to actually have ownership in it. The budget is there. We want to spend less than that budget,
yeah.
rather than exceeding it so that we get an increase in budget. Matter of fact, if we need an increase in budget and you have to do that, let's say you do that for a year, all 4 quarters, you've increased the budget. We need to be looking at who's running the department, in my opinion, or what's going on a lot closer.
Yeah. Oh, you see that all the time. Yeah, large corporations, certainly the government. There's an incentive to spend the budget because if they look back and say, "Wait a minute, you only spent 80 of that 100,000 last year. We're going to drop your budget down to 80 this year." Well, of course, everyone in that department doesn't want that to happen. So the incentive is to spend at the budget or a little over
In excess.
and to justify your existence, so to speak. So, but yes, I mean, to your point, in an ideal world, yes, I think Foundry's management should run on the principle of whatever is the most efficient, cost-effective product, that's what we should use. Do I understand why sometimes that's not always the decision-making process?
Sure.
I do. That's not a battle I can win. That's not a battle I can fight. I just have to show up, prove there's a savings, and if ultimately they decide not to take advantage of the savings, that's their decision.
Sure. I would think that would be frustrating as a sales guy to know that you've got a viable
Oh,
product and know that you can save them money, but they're not doing that. I mean, yeah, how do you do that? I think the only way you really do that is stay consistent, stay disciplined with your message, and continue to show up even when they're not doing business with you, so they know when there's a problem, guess who's going to be there. I'm Abrasive Tim, and I'm here to serve you.
Oh, there's no question. That's the most. If there's a frustrating day, it's when you know you've won on performance, you know that you've demonstrated value, but you don't get the business, whether it's a political situation, whatever it might be. That's hard to accept, but you have to. If you let it eat at you, it just destroys you.
Yeah, makes for a bad
That's
week,
not,
bad
it's not
month, bad year.
productive. But absolutely, that is my approach. This is it's a long-term business.
Right.
Trust takes time to build, and I often say to people that maybe we don't do business early on. I say, look, I'm going to keep showing up if it's okay with you from time to time. The time will come where there is a need. You can't get something, an existing vendor jacks the price up 20-30% on you. I will be here when you need me. I will be here when there is a need. And that's my approach. Just stay the course, keep
Yeah.
showing up, keep working hard, and eventually it pays off, I think.
Yeah, I think
Or you
so.
go out of business and go do something else. So
Well,
hopefully not
hopefully
that, but
that's not the case.
How
Are your
how big
products
is your
produced in
warehouse?
America?
I'm sorry, which
Go ahead and answer the America question.
yeah, most of them are. We do outsource some products. There's certain products that you just aren't going to be competitive on if you don't. If you don't import, we don't do any business with China. Um, when I talk about outsourcing, we're primarily talking about European products or South American products. Um, China zero business, but yes, we work with a lot of American manufacturers. So our business model is this, where we can offer an advantage. It's kind of like going to an independent insurance agent to shop insurance coverages. It's a similar principle in that we work with a lot of small to mid-size manufacturers of abrasive products, a couple of large manufacturers, but primarily small to mid-size. And every one of those manufacturers has their own niche. Some make great snagging wheels. They couldn't make a mounted point to save their life. Some make great mounted points. They don't even know what a cup wheel is. Some make great cup wheels, but you ask them about cutoff, that's not in their wheelhouse. So each one of these uh, suppliers that we work with um, has a niche, and we know what that niche is. And I think so that's one way that we're unique. All of our eggs are not in one basket. Our eggs are in multiple baskets, and that is really helpful when there's a supply crunch, supply chain issues like we saw during COVID. When a vendor is taking you up 20-25%, we've got a lot of options, and I think because of that, 9 times out of 10, we're going to offer a very, very cost effective product, not just in terms of price, but performance as well. So that's kind of the business model. And
Yeah, and sometimes the price can be it
yeah,
can be higher as long as you know what the G ratio is, and to know that okay, the cost might be a little higher for this wheel, but or stone, but you actually it's cheaper in the long run because of the performance that you're
oh
getting
yeah,
for it. So price can't always be the determining factor. And the only reason I say that is because I'm talking to myself as a reminder to myself is, hey, just because the cost is higher than brand X, what's the performance like? And that's where having the numbers to actually be able to look at that and look at a spreadsheet. And the cool thing about it is if the cleaning department will actually pay attention and they'll check G ratios throughout spot check monthly or as the jobs come up, hey, the G ratio was X number of pounds per minute or whatever the G ratio number is, and historically go out and spot check it every week or 2 weeks or every month as a quality control purpose. I think that those numbers would be huge, and to be able to know, well, how is the quality of Tim's wheels doing? We know what it was whenever we tested brand X. We had that G ratio already. So whenever we start to deviate from this area, we need to communicate that with Tim. Say, hey, I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe they press these wheels a little harder than the other ones. They're lasting longer, but our G ratio or our removal rate is going down. So is there anything you could do to check on that? We've set this wheel aside and we're going to give it back to you when the next time you're in, or we can ship it to your place and you guys can check it out, that sort of thing. Having that relationship, I think, is key and huge to be successful and be able to continue to make sure that we're using our labor in a wise manner because we're keeping our G ratios intact and using, I mean, in the grand scheme, using math and science to be better foundrymen. I think it's key in this regard to know what that G ratio is, and if people don't have the time to learn all that sort of stuff, reach out to somebody like Tim or maybe your other abrasive. Not to say that you're the only one that messes with G ratio, but to become better foundry guys, knowing that information, I guarantee you most foundries they don't have a clue what the
I
removal
think,
rate is
yeah, I think
of their
that's true. I
wheels.
can think of accounts where they're price buyers. Uh, if the
Hmm.
price is, they don't care what the quality is. If the price is attractive, that's the basis on which they buy. I can tell you in a lot of those cases, they are overspending because of that approach. they are spending significantly more by buying the cheaper product. And
Agreed.
I know that they're, psychologically, yes, it's hard to, you walk into the store and, something is 30% higher. It's hard to justify that. But if you have some data that indicates that you're getting 50% more performance, you're certainly money ahead to spend the extra money. So, yeah.
Yeah. And the vast majority of those foundries that are struggling with that, and KN Manufacturing is no different. Same thing at Kansas Castings. Kansas Casting, we implemented an ERP system, which I got to say was a disaster. B&L Odyssey. I'm mentioning their name because I'm so frustrated with those guys. The end of this week, I've got to go we got to go figure out what's going on with those guys. We need to implement an ERP system here at KN Manufacturing, and I don't care if their name gets blurred out there. I got to tell you, they just got bought and sold, and I couldn't be more pissed with our experience with those guys. Implementation, everything. But that's beside the point. I digress. The reason I'm even mentioning that is because most foundries that don't have the information about how much labor they clock into a job, they clock out of a job to capture that labor and how many minutes it takes to actually process certain things, probably are the ones that don't care about the performance of the wheel. They just purchase it on a price because they don't know how long it took them to process this particular job. And that's where in the foundry we need to do a better job. A lot of foundries, I guarantee you, if they've got KPIs for key performance indication of how long it takes to grind that casting, and we got to profile this and all that other stuff, and we can get that done in a minute and a half. But when we use the cheap wheels, it takes us 2.5 or 3 minutes. um, what that impact that does for the labor cost that goes up, because I guarantee you they're tracking labor costs without a doubt in their P&L and accounting purposes. But if you have an ERP system where you can clock into a job and you're doing it, and then clocking out of a job and knowing how much time it actually takes you, and you know what your G ratio is, and you know traditionally that your G ratio should be X number of minutes or weight removal, it would help them be able to purchase their abrasives in a much better manner, especially if it comes from a belt that's got high alumina abrasive on it, or if it's ceramic or that sort of thing. What's the performance? How does the belt break down when they're sanding on those things? To the backing, is the backing is really good? Is it good quality backing, or does it the edges break down? And you're getting rid of the belt because the edge breaks down before you've wore out the center of it. So you're really using the belt in a less performance manner. And I guarantee you what's going to happen is the maintenance is not being done on a lot of those backstand grinders or things of that nature, because the wheel will actually break down on the edges and they don't replace that. I know that firsthand because I was one of those idiots. Like, oh no, we don't need to replace that wheel. It's expensive. Just keep your. And then you got all these belts that are over there that still have half the abrasive in the middle, but you need the edge of the belt, and you can't use it because it's completely wore out, because the wheel, the contact wheel that you're using is wore out.
Yes.
It's all of those type of things play a factor in what it costs to actually clean and grind and clean a casting to get it out the door. And I'm guilty. I've been guilty of not buying another contact wheel because it was expensive or this and that and the other. And it's one of those things where you're just being an idiot. I can testify that I was an idiot doing the same thing. So
So that
all
preceding
those type of
segment
things
was
are
brought
better.
to you by Super Caffeinated Nate. Uber caffeinated
Well,
Nate.
maybe I need to do decaf next time I'm fasting. But when you're 40 hours into a 168-hour fast, the only thing you can drink is water, tea, which I drink decaf tea in the evenings, and coffee. And so to do it right, this is what you get.
That's hardest-
Love it or hate it, this is me.
That's one of the hardest conversations to have, is when there's a complaint on product quality and you go in and you learn really quickly, okay, this is a machine issue. We got bad bearings on this saw.
Sure.
I think there tends to be a defensive reaction to, oh, okay, it's not your product. It's not your product. Well, my approach is I want the
Sure.
truth. I don't care if it's, I can't, if truth is not our top priority, we can't solve the problem. You know, truth has to
Right.
be the basis for any product complaint or any issue that's taking place. So that's our approach. I think one value that we provide is safety is a tremendous focus for our company. Uh, we're familiar with the ANSI safety standards. We abide by the ANSI safety standards. If I walk into a foundry and I see something that's unsafe, I won't sell my product. You know, if I see that cup wheel grinders are being used without guards, I'm not going to sell cup wheels. So because I care
Mm,
more about the safety of the employees at that account than I do making some money on cup wheels or whatever product. So that's one thing you'll get from us is there's just safety has to come first. And
right. No,
I've
that's
done
great.
AFS safety presentations, and certainly if I see an issue in the cleaning room, I try to politely, diplomatically bring it up. That can be touchy. That can be touchy. You know,
Yeah.
nobody wants to have somebody come in and tell them how to run their foundry. But when safety is an issue, it's worth taking that risk to maybe rub somebody the wrong way.
Sure. Yeah, and it's easy to get defensive if you don't check your ego when you walk in the door in
Yeah,
the morning, and let your ego get in the way. Honestly, most people need to be assessing or heeding, at least listening to advice without getting
yeah.
defensive. But it's hard to do because it's kind of your baby, it's your department. It's like, well, but the thing is, especially when an outsider comes in and they make a suggestion, it's not always that they're trying to get an edge up or leg up on you because I want to sell my product to you. It's a genuine thing of, hey, there's a problem here. You can actually do better if there's a little bit of maintenance that goes on. The problem is it's not like Tim can just show up with a tabor saw or a swing frame cutoff that has good bearings and that sort of thing. That would be ideal to show up with something that's good. But the problem is you need to be utilizing the equipment, the machinery that they've got on hand that they're going to be using day to day. So those are the things that need to work with. They should know whether they got good bearings or the contact wheel needs to be replaced because it's rolled over and your belts are wearing out or
Uh,
anything
If
like that. So it's one of those things.
if a cleaning room manager or plant manager or foundry owner is listening to this, if I could suggest one thing in terms of safety, make sure that you have a tachometer and make sure that you're checking the speeds on your machines frequently. You know, speed kills. Just like driving in a cleaning room, speed kills. And
Absolutely.
it, it's it's just something you've got to do. Use guards. I don't care if, yes, they can get in the way, they can make it less convenient to grind the casting, but if a wheel breaks for some reason, you're going to want a guard. You want the guard to absorb the broken wheel, not somebody's face shield. Um,
Yeah.
it just don't. There's just no reason not to play it safe. Uh,
Yeah, and as an owner of foundries, I mean, it's very important for all of our teammates and our associates to go home with all their fingers, toes, and
yeah,
eyeballs, all their teeth, and a rock doesn't hit them in the face or something like that. I mean, I've seen wheels blow up, and I've seen non-reinforced swing frame cutoff wheels be used, which is bananas to me that they would even manufacture a 24-inch or 16-inch wheel that
yeah,
doesn't have fiberglass reinforcement embedded into it so that it can hold it together at least as much as you can. The thing is, when you're on a 24-inch swing frame cutoff, you've got what 8 to 10 inches of exposed, 8 or 9 inches of exposed wheel that's usable. You get in that, you get into a deep cut on a deep riser, feeder, and you tweak that thing side to side this way, rather than just going back and forth. You letting the wheel cut and you taking that thing straight down. You get that in there and you tweak that wheel. You give it a
yeah,
little twist. I don't care what reinforcement, it's
yeah.
gonna break. So you got to be the operator has to be cognizant of making sure that he keeps that. You get that groove started when your swing frame cut off, and the thing is, these swing frame cutoffs are very, very powerful machines. I mean, some of them have like 30 horsepower motors on them, and it's just like you're trying to tame a dragon, and you got that thing going. If you start off right and you get the groove cut in there initially first, man, you let that saw do the work. You just guide it and you let it just munch that material right off there, and it's amazing how fast you can cut material. Um, People they get intimidated by it because it's loud, it's big, it's noisy, and it can actually shove you across the floor if you get into a cut and you get it in a jam. It'll slide your feet right across the floor and push you. I've done it firsthand. I've filled in for OCL at D Foundries. OCL's he's about my height, little Hispanic guy, but man, he can make short work of a big, huge riser. He can cut it off in 15, 20 minutes. If you try to cut that off with a art gouge or a plaz or some other way of getting the riser off, actually, I don't even think there's really a good way to get it off there without a swing frame cut off. But man, he's like a surgeon with that thing, and he'd make short work of it. And I, him being small has nothing to do with it. I'm a small guy, although I am a little chubby right now at 180. I think at 188.6 this morning when I weighed, but that saw will push 200 pounds a man right across the shop floor if you're not paying attention. That's for sure. You get in the cut, you let the cut, let the blade in the swing frame
Yeah.
do the work.
Yeah, and back to regarding safety, one cautionary tale I heard about this has been years ago. I think it was a foundry in California. 5/8 a common thread size when we're talking abrasives. A lot of 9 by 1/4 depressed center or type 27 wheels have a 5/8 thread or arbor hole. Also, a lot of cones or plugs, small portable grinding wheels, have a 5/8 thread. This particular accident that I'm thinking of, this was before I was even in the industry, but a an operator used a 9-inch grinding wheel with a 5/8 hub, rated at I think 6,000 or 6,600 RPM, max RPM. Took it, placed it on a horizontal cone plug wheel grinder running 18,000 RPM. Same thread, you know,
3 times
but
the
it's
rated.
3 times the rated
Yeah.
speed. The wheel broke, and it was a fatality. So that's something that foundries need to be aware of. Is that, and that's another reason to use a guard. If you see a
100%.
a grinder and it doesn't have a guard, don't use the 9-inch wheel. I don't care, even if it's running at the
Yeah,
correct speed. If it doesn't have a guard, that's a good way to prevent that situation from happening. But something that
sure.
foundries need to be aware of. You've got the same thread size used on grinders running at dramatically different speeds. Probably
Sure. Now, do you ever
no. Go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead. Do you ever do any safety training or anything for foundries when you're in town or anything like that, if it was scheduled or
I'm
and
always
planned?
happy to. I've done a couple of presentations at AFS meetings on safety. I've done a presentation on diamond wheels and iron foundries, and so I'm always happy to do that. Another key thing, aside from tacking your machines, review the ANSI B71 rules on grinding wheel safety. It that needs to be common knowledge. Every foundry needs to be well versed in that.
ANSI B71.
B7.1, yeah, that's the particular section that talks about abrasive safety. Talks about flanges, talks about guards, talks about speeds.
I venture to say that most Foundry guys probably don't have ANSI B 7.1
Probably not.
memorized. So
That's what when manufacturers are storing wheels or manufacturing wheels. That's the Bible, so to speak, of abrasive safety.
and because I mean a lot of that stuff you get into the weeds. A lot of foundries, especially small foundries. I mean, they if you don't have people that are specifically deal with health and safety and quality and that sort of thing. My buddy Eddie Brown, I'll give him a shout out because he's a safety guru. I'll post stuff on my Snapchat and he'll be like, uh, that's not the safest way to do that. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot Eddie's on here. I got to keep my P's and Q's about me. I can't do something silly like stack a ladder on top of a ladder on top of a ladder. He'll be all over me because he deals with refineries and all kinds of stuff. So he's always super helpful with bringing me back to reality.
Certainly seen
No.
safety issues and efficiency issues created by worn flanges. Rusted out flanges that should have been replaced, 10 years ago or more. The flange, of course, is what's holding the wheel in place. You've got a driving flange and an outboard flange, and it's important. There's certain ANSI requirements on flanges that are important to abide by. And if you don't, if you have a worn out, rusted, dirty flanges, you're going to see performance issues.
And when you refer to flanges, you're referring to like a snag grinder or a bench grinder that's running like a 8, 10, 12-inch wheel, and they basically are the flanges. You got a fixed flange that's on the shaft. You put the wheel we put a blotter on first if it's not already on the wheel. Put a paper blotter on, which for your information, Perry, it's like a heavy
I
cardboard
mean,
more or less. And then you stick the wheel on, and then sorry, I bumped my mic, and then you stick another blotter on, and then you put the flange on, and then you put the nut on it. Yeah, there's a blotter right there. And I never realized, I was just naive about it in my younger years. Why do I need a blotter? This doesn't make any sense. Can you explain to us why blotters are actually
yeah, it's
important,
good to
Tim?
use. It helps increase the hold between the flange and the wheel. Basically,
So the steel flange and the wheel, you put the cardboard blotter in, or thick paper blotter. Does it matter if you use one or two, or is it just better just use one?
I would use one. I don't. Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
I would
So then you don't have paper on paper and it moving.
one.
So it mashes the rough surface of the wheel against the steel flange, and then you got the wheel that smashes that, another blotter, and then the other flange and a nut that goes on there. So it basically gives it just teeth because it grips into there with the paper of the blotter, and it gives it teeth. When it's spinning towards you, it's got some
It's
traction to it. Is that
preventing. I
correct?
call it slippage, so to speak.
Slippage. Yeah. Nobody likes slippage. I
Don't.
guarantee you.
Yeah, you don't want
Ooh,
slip.
you don't want that.
Well, and if you do get slippage between the wheel and the flange, you're going to have bad things are going to happen. You're going to have crooked cuts. You're going to you're going to certainly could break wheels. Um, you just it's important to if you can use a blotter, use a blotter. There's no reason not to use a blotter.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know some wheels most all wheels when you get them,
Yeah,
they all have
yeah,
extra
yeah,
blotters in there. So I mean, you should have an abundance of blotters
yeah,
whenever you're ordering
yeah,
rocks
yeah,
or cutoff wheels.
absolutely. On flanges, like on cutoff wheel applications, part of the ANSI safety code, the flange diameter needs to be at least a quarter of the wheel diameter. So if you're running a 20-inch cutoff wheel, you don't want to use a 3-inch diameter flange. It's not going to provide the stability that's necessary. You can always certainly go larger than a quarter, and there are certain applications where it makes sense to do that. Like, for example, if you have to run a really thin cutoff wheel, for some reason, it's a part where you just can't avoid a lot. You need to avoid kerf loss. You may need to use something really thin. That's a case where you may look at a larger diameter flange to create more stability. The downside, of course, is that you have less usable wheel if you use the
Sure.
larger.
But as the wheel wears, you could put a smaller one on because then you got less exposure and you could use it for a different application. You don't not like you have to throw the
You
wheel
could, if
away, right? So a lot of times our 24-inch wheels OCL he would use them to get them down to a certain point, but he needed the full wheel because he needed the most depth of cut he could get when he's cutting on a large or our feeder or riser contact. So he would take those, set them off to the side, and then he would get another new wheel, put it on there, and then continue to cut, and then use those smaller wheels for other smaller applications, and
you
not throw
needed
them
the
away. So
clearance, the additional clearance. Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So a guy could actually have two different size of flanges on his cutoff swing frame cutoff. He could use a bigger one, especially when he's getting started, and he could actually when he's going to change the wheel out because he's wore it down to what usable for what that wheel is and for those flanges. He could take the flange off. Although the flange on the motor end arbor side no, it's not always fixed. Sometimes it's loose. Yeah, you could do that. You could make or have machined fabricated some larger flanges and then make them interchangeable. Why not? That actually, for safety's sake, that's actually a smart thing to do
If
now
you
that I
want to
think
go to
about it.
if you're willing to go to
The
the trouble
extreme to
to
do that,
change the
yeah.
flanges, that's an option. But
Yeah,
that's just one aspect of safety.
sure.
And of course, any reputable saw manufacturer is not going to sell you a saw that doesn't have the proper flanges. But where you can run into trouble is if you buy used equipment and you don't know what modifications were made, and you just need to be careful and make sure that the machine's safe.
Right. And earlier you made a great suggestion about having a tachometer. Tachometers are so cheap, folks. You should have a tack. You should know how to use it. You can buy them on Amazon for probably less than $50. I mean, there's great ones. You can actually get them, I think, at AutoZone, O'Reilly's, any of the automotive places that you need to run a tachometer. You, I like the ones that actually isn't the timing light, which those work as well for certain things. You got to put a little tape on there, whatever. But the ones that Tim showed me were the ones that it basically looks like a Dremel tool that has this little cone, like, and you put it on the spindle itself while it's running, and it gives you a really accurate reading. Super easy to do. It's got different interchangeable tips and stuff. I have mine
Yeah,
somewhere. I should have got it out as a
the
prop, but I
spindle
forgot.
will have an indentation where you can use a rubber tip on the end of that tachometer to shove
Okay.
it into the indentation. I like the contact tachometer as opposed to the
Yeah.
non-contact. For some reason, I always have a hard time with the non-contact if it doesn't read the tape or But
Right.
just buy a tachometer, whatever preference you have. I like contact,
Yeah. Yeah, but
but
do it. Know what you've got because and know what your tools are rated at because here's the problem you run into, especially if you have any tools that have any that last any amount of time. So it's not some of the Top Cat tools, the Clico tools, things of that nature, stuff that you can actually work on or rebuild. You can change parts out of them and keep them running. Sometimes you'll have those for decades. And to send them in to get rebuilt, Top Cat tools, they make great tools. Clico, all those guys, Dresser Rand, really most of them are even the Chinese ones. I hate to even say they're actually pretty decent tools today, but you just need to know what they are. The problem is on the one that lasts so long is they get used, right? They're used every day. So the little metal tags that are on there or the stampings where they stamp the tools, it's hard to read some of the RPMs that are on there. So you really need to know what they're rated for and document them, even if you have to restamp or do something on the tool itself so that you can document it, keep a log of what those are. The RPM on this day was 12,000 RPM. Today it's at 13,000. Well, something's going on. What and check that and keep a log of each one of those tools. You really should be checking it probably monthly, if not, I mean, at a minimum quarterly, as a good practice. And again, add that to our Foundry 101, Foundry fundamentals for Foundry safety. we want to keep our teammates safe. We don't want nobody going home with one eye. I mean, that's a bad day. It feels like a complete. Doesn't matter how good we do during the year, during the week. If somebody goes home with a lost time accident, we've failed. We failed our team, and especially as a leader, I take that very seriously.
Nothing more important. I mean,
yeah, we're nothing if we got hurt teammates and they're on the bench for sure.
All right. Well, Tim, we want to wrap this up now. Thank you so much for your time, for being with us. Fascinating conversation. I have learned a ton, things I had no idea about. And we want to give people the opportunity to get a hold of you if they want to. I know your website, Cutting Edge Abrasives, is out there, so people can visit you there. Any other contact information you want?
Yes, I'd love to.
Out?
Well, and thank you for having me on. I've had a blast. It's a lot of fun. I hope that something that has been said was useful. But I do, those that are listening, if I can be of help in any way, I would love to. I would love to come look at your cleaning operation. If there's a particular application I can help with, if there's a particular problem that you're having or bottleneck, use me as a resource. Use this as a resource. If you look at my LinkedIn page, my title or my description under my name is Problem Solver. I view that as basically how I justify my existence. I solve problems. You're spending too much money, I help solve the problem. You're not as efficient as you can be on your grinding or cutting applications, I help solve that problem. People can get a hold of us. Phone number 866-968-4144. Our website, cuttingedgeabrasives.com. Give you a good overview of the types of abrasive products that we supply, some of the markets that we cater to. If you don't see something specific to your market or application on there, don't despair. There are a lot of markets, there are a lot of products within the general broad term of abrasives. So putting it all on a website is nearly impossible. But chances are, if you are grinding or cutting metal, we probably can be of help to you. Email. If you'd like to email me directly, I'm always happy to help. Email address is Tim C, as in Charlie, Tim C at cuttingedgeabrasives.com. So feel free to call, feel free to email. Happy to arrange an in-person visit wherever you might be in the world. So again, thank you guys both for having me on. Had a blast, and I'd be happy to come back if it makes sense in the future.
We'll certainly do that,
Awesome.
so it wasn't as scary as you
No,
thought. It's outside of your comfort zone. Tick this one off of the list.
No,
Tim.
no, happy
I'm
to.
proud
I
of you,
hope,
buddy.
hopefully, it
You did
was
awesome.
interesting and informational, and hopefully, we threw in a few good jokes in there just to keep it lighthearted.
Well, I'm sure somebody's laughing either at us or with us, one of the two, and it may just be laughing at the bald guy, but that's okay.
I'm gonna
take
cut
it.
out all the laughing at stuff. So
He's got the power of the cutting
that's right.
wheel on
I got the cutting
on
room
editing.
floor.
Yep.
All right, great. Well, thank you for
I'm
joining
happy
us.
that you're doing it too.
Yep. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys. So long.